Recently I did a video on BSPWM receptacles, which are a great way to move around pre-existing windows, but if you want to automatically place a newly spawned window exactly where you want it to be, there's an easier way to do so, and the way we do that is with BSPWM preselection. Now, I'll get into the technicals of how it works in just a bit, but for now, let's have a look at how to actually use it. By default in BSPWM, you have a predefined direction and ratio that your window is going to spawn with. So obviously when you have an empty desktop, it's going to take up the entire screen. But once you have a window here, your splitting rules are going to start applying. So if I spawn another window, it's going to spawn to the right. So in my case, I'm using the alternate layout. So if you're using a different layout, it might spawn in a different direction. But if I spawn another window while focused on the original window, it'll now spawn below. So there's two things that are taking place here. We have the splitting direction and the splitting ratio. So the splitting direction is where in relation to the previous window, the new window should actually spawn. So in my case, it's right down, right down, right down. And the ratio is how much of the previous window space should the new window actually take up. So in this case, as we can see, if I spawn a second window, it takes up 50%, and then the next window after that takes up another 50%. So preselection lets you modify these two values. The way this works is very simple. So we're going to be using the bspc node command with the --presel -dir option. Now, this option takes in a cardinal direction, so north, south, east, and west. Obviously, north isn't exactly up, but it's close enough to up in this case. So if we want to spawn the window above where we currently are, what we do is we pass in north, and as you're going to see, it creates this sort of blue box here. Now, this blue box basically indicates where the window is going to spawn. So if I spawn literally any other window here, I don't even have to spawn it from my terminal. Let's just spawn my web browser, for example. As we're going to see, it splits into that direction. And we can do this as many times as we want. So if we want to spawn this time, say, to the east, this is going to spawn the box over here, and then spawn another window, it's going to take up that spot. Now, keep in mind, when you're doing preselections, they only take effect if you're focused on the window that actually has the preselection in it. So what I mean is, if we do bspc node --presel -dir south, and then I split a window based off the window on the left here, it's not going to take up this spot. So a preselection is basically telling the window that has a preselection in it where the next window should be split to. Now, you can go and cancel a preselection, and there's two ways to do this. So the first way is bspc node --presel -dir, and then cancel. That will cancel it regardless of the direction. And the other way that we can do this is by doing bspc node --presel -dir, and then before the direction we want to cancel, we include a tilde. So let's say we want to cancel south. So what this basically means is either cancel the preselection in that direction, or if there isn't a preselection there, then go and create it. So if we run that now, as we can see, it does that. We run it again, it will make the preselection. Now, if you go and make a preselection in a direction that doesn't already have one, but you already have a preselection created, it's going to move the preselection into that direction. And unlike a receptacle, if we go and quit this window right here, it's going to get rid of the preselection. We don't need to do any special handling to do it, because the preselection only relates to that window while it's open. And the next option we have is the presel ratio, which controls, obviously, the ratio of the preselection. So this takes in a value from 0 to 1, with 0 being the new window takes up 100% of the space, and 1 being it takes up 0% of the space. So this number represents how much space is left over for the original window. So if we set it to something like, say, 0.66, this means the original window will retain 66% of the space, and the new window will take up 33%. So as we can see, spawn a new window, it's like that. So let's set it to 0.2, and as we can see, it takes up 80%, and the original window takes up about 20%, and there we go. Now, this can be combined with the preselection direction as well, and probably should be, just so you know exactly where it's going to spawn. So if we do --presel ratio, I don't know why I tried to write that out, we'll set it to 0.7, and let's set the presel -dir to, I guess, north, and spawn a new window. As we can see, it does that. Now, there's not much in the way of configuration, but we can go and set the color of the preselection direction. So if we go into my BSPWM config, into the BSPWM RC, if we go down to this one right here, so BSPC config presel _feedback _color, that's basically whatever the color of the preselection window is going to be. Basically what's happening here is BSPWM maintains a binary tree, but it doesn't split in the way that you might think it does. So let's say we have two windows over here. So when I make a second window, you might think that this window then becomes a child of this window, but that's not actually how it works. So when you have a node spawning off of another node, basically what happens is they're both made the child of another node. So in this case, we have these two nodes here, and then above it, you have another node, and these two nodes are the children of that node. So we can go and demonstrate this by doing something very simple. If we do bspc node at parent, and then let's do, say, -r, so we change the ratio, and we change the ratio to something like 0.6. So that will actually change the ratio of both of these windows, but if we did the operation directly on this window right here, so if instead of doing at parent, we just do -r, and let's change it to something like, say, 0.4, that's not actually going to do anything. So when you make a preselection, it's basically temporarily making this structure. So we have the parent node above it, and then we have the child node, which is the original node. So let's say this window right here, and the other child is going to be the preselection. But unlike a receptacle, when you go and make a new node, you don't have to manually add it into the child. In the case of a preselection, it automatically gets added into that with no extra work. So in a lot of situations, preselections and receptacles are going to be fairly equivalent, but this doesn't mean they're always going to be the same. And for a lot of cases, I would say that preselections are going to be considerably more limited, and this is due to the fact that they do a lot of stuff automatically for you. So let's say that we make a preselection, so to the east here, for example. So presel east, I can't then go and do something like, say, add this node into that spot. All I can do with this preselection is make a new window to put into that spot, and then obviously I could open up the same program, but it's not really the same sort of thing. But with a receptacle, what I could do is I could actually go and make a receptacle for that spot, so make that to that spot there, and then I could make a new window and put it there, or I could put an existing window and go from there. Even when it comes to doing stuff automatically, it's not like receptacles really have that much of a disadvantage, because both of them are going to be included inside of the BSPWM events. Now, in the case of receptacles, those are going to be in the node add event. So I'll just show you the man page for BSPC. So if we go down to node_add, this is the event you're going to want to use if you go and add a receptacle and you want to know when receptacles are being added. What you're going to have to do is just basically check if that node is empty, and if it's empty, then it's going to be a receptacle. Now, as for doing preselections, they actually have their own dedicated event. So that would be node_presel, and that has all this information. So monitor ID, desktop ID, node ID, the direction, ratio, and also whether it's been cancelled or anything like that. So it doesn't just tell you when you make them, it also tells you when you cancel them as well. Also, the nice thing about receptacles is they don't need a marker. So the reason why you need to have that big blue or whatever color you set it to for a preselection is because without that there, you would have no idea of which direction you're actually preselecting into. So if you want to make a preselection, really that window becomes very hard to use until you actually go and use the preselection. But with a receptacle, you can just leave the receptacle there and then come back to it in 15 or 20 minutes, and it's not actually going to affect your work. It's just like having an extra tiled window there, except this tiled window just has nothing in it. Personally, I prefer using receptacles though, but there's nothing stopping you using them together, and both of them together basically create the basis for doing custom layouts inside of BSPWM, as well as doing things like manual tiling. And this is how things like the BSP layout program work, which if you haven't seen that, sort of adds DWM-like layouts into BSPWM. And I'm going to be looking at that in a future video because it sounds really, really cool. Now, I know that I mainly focus on how to actually do stuff, but if you want an idea of what's actually possible in BSPWM, I really recommend going and checking out this guy's channel, who is basically the king of BSPWM, and anything you could possibly want to do, he's probably demonstrated in one of his videos. I think towards the end of this, he goes over things like receptacles and preselection and things like that. So if you want to see what's actually possible with them, rather than just seeing how they work, I really, really recommend checking this out and checking out some of this guy's older videos. I think recently he's been doing a lot of Emacs stuff, but if you go back to his 2019 content, it was basically all BSPWM. So I think that's pretty much everything for me. Before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Chris, Joachim, Donald, Corbinian, Andre, Nathan, Monster, Chicobento, Joseph, Mitchell, Peter D, Road, Tony, and all of the $2 patrons. If you want to go and support, I've worked them links down below to my Patreon, subscribe star, LibrePay, all of that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere you can listen to podcasts, and then this channel is available on Odyssey, Library, and BitChute if you want to watch on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.